Hey, welcome back to Mike's Diabetes World. Okay, current blood sugar was sitting at 13. All last night I kept creeping up. So that's telling me there's probably something wrong with my sight. So this morning I changed out my sight and took some extra insulin after doing a ketone test and showing I was at a 1. I took control of the situation and hopefully it'll come back down. You can see how it really worked last night where I went at 3, started to climb up. You could say this is a little bit of a dawn phenomenon, but I don't think so. I still have, 4.225 units of insulin left in my system. So I think I'll start to see it go down quite quickly. Time and range took a hit. Yesterday we were at 100. Today we're at 86, and you can see how it's graphically shown here. So that means I was 14% above 86% time and range. So if we go to our calculator here, where's our calculator? Let's do this. 14%, so 14 times 15. Now, every 1% represents 15 minutes. It equals 210. 210 minutes divided by 60 equals, for 3.5 hours I've been out of range. So that's not a real great amount. You start really feeling blah. So I changed sites, took some extra insulin, or took a correction dose, and now we're going to come down. Today I want to discuss a child has diabetes and what all the weird things are going to start happening. Stay tuned. This channel is provided for informational purposes only. Contact your physician for any diagnostic or treatment plan. Your child has diabetes. To you, you may have suffered through the feelings, what did I do to prompt this? Chances are you probably didn't do anything. But you have to move on with it. A young child is going to depend on you. I got diabetes when I was 13. And it was immediately that sleepovers were kind of a thing of the past. But you gotta remember, 47 years ago, things were a little different. There was a mystique about diabetes, where now there isn't so much of a mystique. Parents can monitor their sons or daughters through telephones, and they can say, hey, you're getting a little high, take some insulin. So there's not such being scared. I can remember being signed up for a class and then coming back and it had been completely changed, and found out the teacher wasn't comfortable with me having diabetes. Now, we wouldn't even stand for that because you're being prejudiced. And I was old enough to know that when I got the symptoms, because back then I was feeling the symptoms, I had to go see a nurse. Most of the teachers were okay, but there were a few that, oh, well, in PE, if he exerts himself, he could have a real injury. Oh, and I don't want to be responsible. And what happens if a kid has asthma and starts, you just want the perfect class. So it's kind of subliminal. Oh, what do you call it? I'll think of the word, sorry, where they don't want you. Parents don't really want you to stay over, because if you had a low blood sugar during the day, they can just call the parents. I did have a sleepover with my best friend, and it wasn't as bad. They were kind of open. They knew I was 13 going on 14. What was the deal? Now, as you're dealing with younger kids, you're going to either have liberal parents or you're going to have the very protective parents. I'm now talking about the diabetics' parents. The one thing you have to remember is that the child is still a child. They're going to want to play with their friends. They're going to want to do everything. They're going to want to go to the fair and eat everything else that everyone else is eating. I can remember I got diabetes, and we went to, a group of us went to the P&E, and I had to bring my little sack lunch where everyone was having hamburger, fries, but no, you have a certain amount of calories. This was before counting carbs. That would have made life so much easier. It makes life so much easier now. If your son or daughter has been diagnosed with diabetes, they can be accepted so much easier into the real world. The pump. The pump is an instrument which facilitates that. They can go out, they can have friends. As they get older, they can start taking control of their diabetes. The one thing I can remember as my parents, and let me just say, they did their best. But if I got any sort of higher blood sugar, it was, what did you do? What have you ate? And it's kind of like I just had to be the perfect diabetic. And every other T1D had to be the perfect diabetic. And if they screwed up, oh, you were going to go blind, you were going to lose a leg. You're not going to do that with one sugar. However, a week of sugars or 3 days of higher sugars means you may have to take a look at your settings and do that with the approval of your doctor. Got some dried skin or something there. Sorry. Don't make your child feel subpar to every other kid. I can remember we went to diabetic camp, and the whole thing was that children were to A, learn about their diabetes, B, have fun as kids. And there were a couple of parents that, the kind of looking in, and they'd stop by every day, and you could see the counselors were pretty well just let them be, but they could have a low. Well, that's why they had doctors and nurses there. I didn't want to go to diabetic camp. I was 13 years old. Felt like there was a lot going on in my life. But doing that and then coming back, after it, I wouldn't have given it up for anything. So it's one of the greatest experiences. If you're able to get your son or your daughter into diabetes camps, whether they're day camps or sleepaway camps, you really should. It's a great experience. With new devices, you're able to keep tabs on your son or your daughter during school days, and you can do it when they're away from you. Your son or your daughter is going to have to be away from you for a bit. It was great fun if I got away from my parents for a bit. But don't judge them. Don't sort of do what my parents did. Even though my parents meant the best, don't sort of say, and what did you do? Or what have you eaten? You're putting a hell of a lot of pressure. You got it from parents, you got it from other family members who don't really understand diabetes. You're getting it from the school. We moved to Edmonton when I was living with my dad. And while in Edmonton, it was a completely different system, but they had a nurse who came in every Tuesday to Thursdays, and I'd get called out of class, and I'd have to go and do a urine test. And you know how embarrassing that was? But they had to check to make sure you were doing things right. Everyone is going to judge them. If they do one thing out of step, oh my God, he's doing everything out of line. He's going to go blind. Again, you're not going to go blind or lose a limb from one blood sugar. It was always what was the kid doing wrong. And I can remember I was in the older kids. There was a program called Leaders in Training, which was like 14 to 18-year-olds, which they had a separate camp part. And then there was We were the oldest of the campgoers. And we'd sit there and the counselors would put us to bed or whatever. And we would just talk and say what was happening in our school lives. And you know what? There were an awful lot hearing the same stories. How we were, I still can't think of the word, not disabled. Where you can't do it because you're diabetic. The word I know, once I stop taping this, it'll come out. So don't be the diabetic hovering parent. You're going to have to start to relinquish control. If they run into problems, don't chastise. Say, and what happened? Was there a reason today? Or, your blood sugar went a little high. What was the reason? Open up the lines of communication. As your son or your daughter gets older, your child will grow into an adult. And I know you want the best for your son or your daughter, but you're going to have to let go. And if you're one of those parents who ends up doing everything for their child, they're not going to learn how to handle their diabetes. It was kind of all over today, but be a support network for your son or your daughter in the later teen, early 20 years. And with that, have a great day, and we'll talk later. Bye now. My email is mikesdiabetesworld@gmail.com. mikesdiabetesworld@gmail.com.